To find out if we've always misjudged our relationship with drugs, we need to take a step back in time. I'm meeting Professor Jim Mills, an expert in the history of Scotland's drug use.
So how far back can you take me? Because I'm kind of aware of what the drug landscape was when I was doing drugs, and maybe a wee bit before that, but then, you know, things go a bit blank.
Opium is first mentioned in the list of drugs available at an apothecary's in Edinburgh back in 1575. Although we don't know whether anybody was actually buying this substance really until the 1660s, when the Lord of Glenorchy is sent a bill by an apothecary in Perth for all the medicinal products that the householders ordered that year. And in amongst them is laudanum. It's the elite families of Scotland and their households which seem to be buying these substances. You'll find that coming at the end of the 18th century, attitudes began to darken towards opium and its consumption. Here you've got a letter from James Campbell, who was a doctor who'd served in India, and once at home he was writing a letter to his brother-in-law about his sister Mary. He writes in the letter that Jean wrote her mother, desiring to know whether she might try opium. This certainly will give temporary relief, but it is a bad practice, and you'll see he's underlined that. But if once begun, it will be found necessary to continue it. And this is the first time that I've found evidence in Scotland that doctors were beginning to voice concerns, certainly about regular use of opium.
I'm wondering at what point in this history that you're charting that a criminal dimension to drug use begins to emerge that obviously foreshadows what comes later.
So you see a gradual process beginning to build by which these substances are seen as suspicious. Cannabis, which is little used in Scotland, apart from in medical experiments in the 19th century, that's added to the list in the Dangerous Drugs Act, as is cocaine. Now, the British system, it's been argued, was first established in the 1920s, when, if you like, there was a face-off between the Home Office, who wanted to use a far more penal and punitive approach to habitual users of these substances, against the Ministry of Health, which had declared that drug addiction was a disease, and therefore it was the business of doctors, not police officers or magistrates, to deal with.
Fascinating.
I can only wonder what Scotland might be like if 100 years ago it had been the Ministry of Health who had won that fight. But they didn't. And in 1971, Britain passed the Misuse of Drugs Act, enshrining in law the system of drug prohibition that still stands today.
It has been said that the definition of insanity is to repeat the same action over and over while expecting different results. The Misuse of Drugs Act had its 50th birthday last year, the same year that we once again seen over 1,000 drug-related deaths in Scotland.
Drugs policy is still the responsibility of the UK government, and in December 2021, Boris Johnson announced £300 million to combat drugs gangs. It seems the commitment to drugs as a criminal concern continues.